Welcome to the Joseph Evaldi podcast. I am your host, Joseph Evaldi, and this is a part of the newly formed Joseph Evaldi Network. And as you may know, the Joseph Evaldi brand is rebranding itself and it's going through a renovation. And we've been going through that renovation process as we speak. Many things have been going on and a lot behind the scenes. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about what I've been working on and what I've been planning. Because I'm going to first give a plug out to the Olkanuts Network. A podcast that a good friend of the podcast is on, and that's Wolfman Joe. And he is on the show called Ricky and Wolfman Joe Show. And in that show, they discuss 3 topics and go over it in unison and have the podcast. And we're happy to say we have the same person on a brand new show. We're going to be launching it in a few more days. It's called The Totem Wolf and Bearheart Podcast. In that, they discuss 2 topics in sci-fi movies, action movies maybe, history, myth, even professional wrestling, and they go over their topics. It's going to be an interesting show, folks, and it's going to be very good. And we're going to do plugs, and I'm going to plug Ricky's Fireside and Chat and his Posey podcast, which I happen to be on as Wolfman Joe. Plug in some work. I have to get a little bit of information on what it is whenever it comes out, but I recorded some stuff on it, very good, and some of the stuff was from Apparitions of a Warrior that I wrote, which wouldn't mind reading some for you sometime, but maybe I might do another podcast with my works as a Soul Warrior's Journey. We shall see. But it's a lot of things in store, and it's the New Year, so I'm gonna, before anything, I want to plug the Joseph Evaldi blog, which is josephevaldi.blog. You can find my latest blogging work and everything else, and I'm gonna also plug my book, A Soul Warrior's Journey. And a lot of things are in store, and it's the New Year's. And without further ado, let me discuss New Year's. I know it's a little late, and I know I should have had that podcast ready New Year's, but didn't turn out that way. I've been busy. What can I discuss about New Year's? New Year's is time to make resolutions, it's time to begin, and you know what? For me, it's all about closing chapters. Yes, closing chapters. I'm not going to discuss a lot about the stress, but running a brand, there's stress involved with it. It's stress of clearing the old to get to your muse. And that's what I've been doing. I've been clearing the old just to get to my muse. And sometimes you need to fight for your right for your muse. That's right, you need to fight the adaptive BS to get to wherever you need to go, and I love to do that. And now, I'm thinking, this is a new me this year. Sometimes I've dealt with stress and anxiety as most people, but let's face it, this podcast is a good podcast. And we went through our rocky bumps along the way, and sometimes we faded along the way, but podcast is coming back. And a lot of things can change within the new year and with the Joseph Evaldi brand. I've got books that could be relaunched. I have podcasts that could come out. I've got blogs that I could do, and I got writing projects that are just waiting and calling for me. It's a new beginning. New beginning of new brand. You know, sometimes we get caught up with a lot of things in life, but don't let it sidetrack us. As I said in the beginning of the year, we stand tall despite defeat and hope for one victory. And it's true. It's true. I faced defeat many, many times, but I came back stronger. And I never let anything get in the way, despite losing whatever I lost. But I know that at the end of the day, something good comes out of something. So I plugged away, I worked on my art, I built, I create, and everything else, and never let anything get in the way. And I'm still creating to this day. And as a struggling artist, I find my way, and I find my way through the muse in order to create something. Something, as my friend would call, timeless. Now, what I'm planning this year in the rebrand is it's finding my identity again. Because when your identity is taken from you, as I know, you lose who you are, and you find other identities in yourself, which I will bring guests on this show of my own. One of them is Wolfman Joe. Another may be Blood Demon. Another may be Joseph the Russian Bear, as many would know. But this podcast and the unison of it is changing. When also even Joe Macho might pop up in this podcast. You never know who might pop up. Special guests of myself and my own creation. Different time periods and everything else. I might even invite a guest of myself to discuss a time period that was lost in captivity, that explains the times of that period, and what went on and what transpired. It'll be interesting, and it'll be an interesting take. Yes, this podcast can be a time capsule throughout time. And it's going to be a new way of how this show is done. I will interview these special guests who pop up in the show, and who better to interview me than me. And I am going to go on a commercial break. When I come back, Hold on a second. Losing the screen. When I come back, I will discuss more of what's going on with the podcast.
The fans look forward to wrestling, and they are part of the show. It was just yesterday on WWE Raw that the wave broke out on TV, and they stopped wrestling. The fans are as much of the production as the wrestlers. It is us who influence the direction of wrestling, and they say what they wanted. I remember when I was at a WCW event, and I started a Sid chant to beat up an opponent. He was a heel at the time, but my chant made him a face, and it was heard on cable TV. I guess then I influenced the crowd at that time, and the crowd reacted. Crowds have been known to influence the direction of where the storylines go. At times, the wrestling promotion likes to swerve the crowd, an unanticipated twist in the storyline. Crowds are a part of the show. However, the production makes the show. It's the people at the concession stands. It's the people who control the lighting and the camera work. Through the course of this audiobook, you will see the change in wrestling, of how it is operated and how it is produced, and how it influenced society as a whole. Now, as Vince put it, they compete with all forms of entertainment as society changes and try to stay relevant. You have the traditional fans, but if you're my age, of 36, the last wrestlers still wrestling on a main stage from the 1980s era are Sting and The Undertaker. This is a statement of the times, and like every era, it changes.
That was Evolution of the Squared Circle, the production of professional wrestling, written by Joseph Evaldi, narrated by Dickie Thomas. It is now available on Amazon and Audible, iTunes. It is also available on the Amazon Kindle. Back to the podcast. I'm back, and I also want to give another plug out. The Ricky and Wolfman Joe show. It's a podcast program. It's a very good show that features good friend of the show, Ricky, and he does whatever he needs to do, and we work as one hell of a podcast. It's not out yet. It's in recording, but when it's released, when the launch date comes on, I will be sure to tell you. Back to the podcast. New Year's. Time that we make resolutions, some that we break. You know, we say we're gonna do this, we say we're gonna do that, we never wind up doing it. But later on in the beginning of April, that's when we do it. That's when we eventually go to the gym again. That's when we eventually do whatever. But we start going to the gym in January. But you know what? Let's just say this. What happens if we don't set those goals for ourselves? Maybe out of the 10 goals, maybe one of them we'll keep. And we'll focus through. And that goal will compound, as Darren Hardy would say, and it will build. Now, I'm a firm believer of this. If you start with one goal and you build it, as my friend was telling me and discussing about etherealism, is, I believe what you want, but it's where you can create